Sometimes life doesn't tap you on the shoulder, it crashes into your soul without warning. On a warm Friday evening in Adelaide, South Australia, a moment meant for peace turned into a desperate cry for help that would shake the hearts of even the strongest among us. The sky was golden, the breeze soft as silk, and on Warramunga Street in Fulham, a 40-year-old woman named Megan Eastoff was tending to something she cherished more than words could say, her beloved horse. The scene was pastoral, serene, and almost dreamlike. A quiet suburb alive with birdsong, where horse owners strolled through paddocks with calm smiles and a gentle routine. Megan stood by her stallion's side, carefully placing food into his trough, while her thoughts danced ahead to the delicious meal waiting for her at home. She didn't know, couldn't have known, that her life was seconds away from colliding with raw darkness. The River Torrens shimmered behind her, reflecting soft hues of orange and indigo as the sun melted into the horizon. Trees cast long, dancing shadows across the ground like whispering spirits, but then, at exactly 8:15 p.m., the peace was shattered. A sound, strange, sharp, and soul-piercing, cut through the stillness like a scream from another world. Megan froze. Her fingers stiffened mid-motion as she tilted her head. The sound came again, a meow, but not like any meow she had heard before. It was a scream of suffering, soaked in terror, echoing with desperation. It gripped her chest like a cold hand. Her body moved before her mind could make sense of it, pulling her toward the riverbank. Her feet stumbled over the thick grass and stones, and there, just beyond the reeds, her eyes fell on something she would never forget. A small, black kitten, barely 6 months old, floating in the water. "God, help me," she whispered, "for the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their cry." In that moment, the quiet life she had always known unraveled. This wasn't just a sound, it was a soul crying out, and the universe had chosen her to hear it. The kitten's eyes were wide with panic, its tiny body trembling against the cold ripple of the river. Megan's heart screamed louder than her voice could as she dropped to her knees at the edge of the bank. "Sweet baby, please come here. Come on, please," she called, her voice cracking like dry leaves underfoot. But the kitten didn't move, couldn't move. It thrashed feebly, paws barely keeping its head above water, mouth open in another silent scream. Megan leaned dangerously over the edge, waving and coaxing, desperate to guide the animal to safety. "I tried to coax her to swim to me," she would later tell investigators, her voice still quivering with disbelief. "She tried ... but she wouldn't come. Something felt wrong, deeply, horribly wrong." Megan wasn't just watching a cat hesitate, she was watching a creature chained to death. Her instincts told her there was something unseen beneath the water. She shifted along the riverbank, hoping for a better angle, and then her world collapsed, her breath hitched. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh no, no, no," she gasped. There, glinting just beneath the surface, was a thick electrical cord tied tightly around the kitten's waist. The other end vanished into the depths of the water. Megan's eyes followed the line until she saw the unspeakable, a power tool, rusted and heavy, tied to the other end. Someone, some soulless being, had done this on purpose. A conscious decision had been made to send this kitten into a watery grave. Megan's knees buckled as tears poured down her face. "Who could do this?" she whispered. But there was no time for answers. The kitten's eyes locked onto hers, wide and terrified, as if begging her not to leave. And Megan knew, if she didn't act now, that tiny flicker of life would vanish into the dark. Even the sparrow has found a home, and the swallow a nest for herself. A place near your altar, O Lord Almighty. In that fragile moment, beneath the vast sky and beside a trembling creature, Megan felt the divine weight of what it meant to answer a cry from the wild. The river wasn't just deep, it was ruthless. Its calm surface disguised a quiet current, powerful and cold, with a deceptive strength that could pull the strongest swimmer under. Megan's trembling hands hovered uselessly over the water as panic warred with logic. She couldn't go in. The depth was over a meter, and the bank was steep and slick with moss. If she slipped, she could become another casualty. She needed help. Her voice erupted into the still air, louder than it had ever been before. "Help! Somebody please help me!" she screamed. Her voice shattered the silence of Warramunga Street, echoing off fences and rooftops, colliding with brick walls and empty sidewalks. "There's a cat drowning, please!" Every heartbeat was a thunderclap in her ears. Every second lost was a step closer to death for the kitten. But then, through the blur of tears and the chaos of fear, hope appeared. Jessica Searle, -22, years old, Megan's best friend and a fellow animal lover, came running. Her sneakers slapped the pavement as she rushed across the open field, her chest heaving, hair flying behind her like a banner of urgency. "Megan? What happened?" Jessica shouted, arriving breathless. Megan pointed, barely able to speak, and when Jessica saw the kitten, when she understood, she didn't hesitate. Not even for a heartbeat. She began stripping off her shoes. Her jacket. "I'm going in," she said firmly. "That poor baby is not dying today." "Jessica, please be careful," Megan cried, reaching out instinctively. The thought of losing her friend now was unbearable. But Jessica was already knee-deep in the freezing water. Her body jerked as the cold sank into her bones. "It's okay, little one," she called. Softly, her voice trembling but sure. "I'm coming for you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." Jessica's courage didn't just wade into that river, it illuminated the shoreline. This was no ordinary rescue. This was humanity answering back to cruelty with fierce, unstoppable love. The water fought her with every step. As Jessica plunged deeper, the current wrapped around her legs like invisible hands, pulling, pushing, resisting. The cold bit through her skin. Her muscles tightened, but her eyes never left the kitten. "Stay with me, sweetheart. Just hold on," she whispered. As she moved closer, from the bank, Megan sobbed into her hands, watching helplessly as her best friend disappeared further into the shadows of the river. "She's not gonna make it," she thought for a split second, before quickly silencing the doubt. "She has to—" Jessica's feet slid over the muddy bottom as she approached the trembling kitten. Just a few more steps, just a few more heartbeats, and then, at last, her fingers brushed the wet fur. "I've got you," she said through gritted teeth. She reached under the kitten, but the weight of the cord yanked it downward. It was heavier than she expected, soaked, tangled, and dead weight from the power tool beneath. Her arms trembled as she pulled, fighting not just gravity, but evil itself. With one last surge of strength, she ripped the cord loose. The kitten collapsed into her arms, soaked, cold, but still alive. Megan screamed in joy and relief as Jessica turned back toward the bank, the kitten clutched to her chest. Her legs burned, her lungs screamed, but she made it. When Jessica emerged from the water, the kitten gave a tiny, exhausted mew, a sound that would break a million hearts if they heard it. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. They saved more than a cat that day. They saved something sacred, the belief that even in a world where evil tries to drown innocence, goodness will dive in after it. Jessica's voice trembled like a leaf in a storm, yet it cut through the icy air with startling clarity. "Oh God, Megan, there's something heavy tied to it," she cried out, her words jagged with urgency and heartbreak. In that moment, standing waist-deep in the bitter waters of the River Torrens, her fingers brushing against the trembling fur of the black kitten, Jessica felt a surge of disbelief. And horror surged through her chest like lightning. She had made it to the kitten, her arms shaking from cold and adrenaline, but what she discovered next stopped her heart cold. Wound tightly around the kitten's frail body, so tightly it had carved red welts into the soaked fur, was a thick electrical cord. It was cutting into the animal's waist, digging into the flesh beneath its coat. As if someone had meant for pain to last until breath left the body, Jessica's eyes widened in disbelief. She followed the length of the cord, and then her soul froze. Attached to the other end, submerged, rusted, cruel, was a Makita electric circular saw. "It's a saw, Megan, a power tool. It weighs at least 6 kilos, she shouted, her voice splintering into sobs. Panic clawed at her chest as she tried, one-handed, to loosen the cable from the kitten's body, her other arm holding the creature above the frigid water. Her fingers were nearly numb from the cold, fumbling against knots that refused to give. "I can't get the cord off," she gasped. On the bank, Megan's tears blurred her vision as she screamed back, "Don't! Let go! Don't let go of the baby! Bring them both!" And just like that, Jessica made a decision that would change the course of 2 lives forever. She wrapped her arms around both the kitten and the heavy saw, locking her muscles against the screaming protest of her body. Every nerve was fire. A current pulled, the tool dragged, but she refused to let go. Inch by painful inch, she pushed herself toward shore. The river seemed endless. Twice she stumbled, nearly falling. But when her legs almost gave out, Megan was there, wading in, crying, reaching for her with both hands. Together, they pulled the kitten and the saw from the current and collapsed onto the muddy bank, gasping, shaking, drenched. The world around them blurred, but between their arms lay a life, cold and quivering, but still breathing. The 6-month-old kitten was safe. Rescue those being led away to death. Hold back those staggering toward slaughter. And as they sat there shaking, soaked, and sobbing, the trauma began to unravel, not just in their bones, but in their spirits. The rescue was over. But the truth was just beginning to surface. The women sat there on the muddy riverbank, near Warramunga Street, clinging to the kitten like it was their own child. Jessica's lips had turned pale from the cold. Megan's hands trembled uncontrollably, her shirt soaked and streaked with dirt and tears. And yet, in the center of all that chaos, one broken, fragile kitten, its eyes dull with terror, its breath shallow, its fur clumped with water and blood. They hadn't just rescued a cat. They had pulled a soul out of the clutches of death. Itself. "I can't believe someone would do this," Jessica whispered, her voice barely audible. She looked down at the tiny body in her arms, barely more than a handful, and her eyes welled with fresh tears. "Look at how small he is. He's just a baby." Then, something Megan hadn't noticed before suddenly made her cry out in horror. "Oh my God, Jessica, look at this!" She gasped, pointing to the deep red indentations on the kitten's sides. The electrical cord had been wound so tightly that it had sliced into the flesh beneath the fur. This hadn't just been an act of abandonment, it was a calculated act of torture. Someone had tied this tiny being to a power tool heavy enough to ensure it would drown. Not quickly, but slowly, painfully, with no hope of escape. The realization hit both women like a physical blow. Jessica clutched the kitten tighter, unable to comprehend the cruelty. "This is evil," she said, her voice shaking with fury. "Someone actually planned this. They planned to kill it." For the next several minutes, neither woman moved. They sat, drenched and devastated between waves of rage and grief. They couldn't make sense of it. They didn't want to, but they knew what had to come next. They wrapped the kitten in Jessica's jacket, trying to warm its tiny frame, and with trembling urgency they raced to the nearest emergency veterinary hospital in Adelaide. The trauma wasn't over. It had only just begun. The Lord is close to the broken-hearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Somewhere, someone had tried to destroy this life. But tonight, 2 women had chosen to fight for it instead, and in that fight they became more than rescuers. They became witnesses to the worst and best of what humanity can be.